I'd like to welcome you to this section titled Batch Processing or Batch Epics. As a developer, now you can employ batch epics to build complex, long-running processes that run on thousands of records on the Lightning platform. Batch epics operates over small batches of records, covering our entire record set and breaking the processing down to manageable chunks. So for example, as a developer, you could build an archiving solution that runs on a nightly basis, looking for records past a certain date and adding them to an archive. Or also, you could build a data cleansing operation that goes through all accounts and opportunities on a nightly basis and updates them if necessary based on a custom criteria. Batch epics is exposed as an interface that must be implemented by you, the developer. Batch jobs can be programmatically invoked at runtime using epics. We can only have 5 queued or active batch jobs at one time. We can evaluate our current count by viewing the scheduled jobs page in Salesforce or programmatically using SOAP API to query the async epics job object. So in this section, we will understand batch processing in epics, and we'll be considering a scenario wherein we will process large numbers of records on a daily basis, probably the cleansing of data and maybe deleting some unused data. Using batch epics. Batch epics again is asynchronous execution of epics code, specially designed for processing the large number of records and has greater flexibility in governor limits than the synchronous code. When do we use batch epics? Number one, when you want to process large number of records on daily basis or even on specific time of interval, then you could go for batch epics. Number two, also, when we want an operation to be asynchronous, then we can implement the batch epics. Batch epics is exposed as an interface that must be implemented by you, the developer. Batch jobs can be programmatically invoked at runtime using epics, and batch epics operates over small batches of records, covering our entire record set and breaking the processing down to manageable chunks of data. So now using batch epics. When we're using the batch epics, we must implement the Salesforce provided interface, database.batchable, and then invoke the class programmatically. You can monitor the class by using these steps. To monitor or stop the execution of batch epics batch job, we can go to number one, setup, monitoring, epics jobs or jobs, and then epics jobs. So again, we would click on setup, then monitoring, then epics jobs or jobs, and then epics jobs. Database.batchable interface has the following 3 methods that need to be implemented. Number 1, start. Number 2, execute. And number 3, finish. So let us examine those methods in a little bit more detail. The first one is start. The start method is one of the 3 methods of the database.batchable interface. The syntax would be as shown: global and then between braces, database.queryLocator hyphen iterable, and then that is where you have your start, database.batchable context. This method will be called at the starting of the batch job and collects the data on which the batch job will be operating. Consider the following points to understand the method. Use the database.queryLocator object when you're using a simple query to generate the scope of object use in the batch job. In this case, the so-called data row limit will be bypassed. And then use the iterable object when you have complex criteria to process the records. Database.query locator determines the scope of records which should be processed. Now the second method is the execute method. So let us examine the execute method of the database.batchable interface. The global void execute, and now we're talking about the syntax as you can see in the example. This method, the execute method, gets called after the start method and does all the processing required for the batch job. And then finally, finish, the finish method of the database.batchable interface. As you can see the syntax, global void till the end. This method gets called at the end, and you can do something, we can do some of the finishing activities like sending an email with information about the batch job's records processed and status. So let us consider an example of our existing company and assume that we have requirements to update the customer status and customer description field of customer records which have been marked as active and which have been created date as today. This should be done on a daily basis, and an email should be sent to a user about the status of the batch processing. Update the customer status as processed and customer description as updated via batch job. To execute this code, let's first save it and then paste the following code in execute anonymous. This will create the object of class, and database.execute method will execute the batch job. Once the job is completed, then an email will be sent to the specified email address. And let's just make sure that we have a customer record which has active as checked. Once this class is executed, then we can check the email address that we have provided where we will receive the email with information. Also, you can check the status of the batch job via monitoring page and steps as provided. Limitations include that we can only have 5 batch job processing at a time. This is one of the limitations of batch epics. Scheduling the epics batch job using epics detail page. We can schedule the epics class via epics detail page as given. Step 1, let's go to the setup and then epics classes and then click on epics classes. Step 2, click on the schedule epics button. Step 3, provide details. We can also schedule the epics batch job using schedule interface as shown in this example.